Hey there, in this set of tutorials, we'll learn how to create intelligent and beautiful forms using Revit's family and conceptual massing environments. We'll begin the process with some basic form creation concepts like making surfaces and extrusions. From there, we'll explore how to easily create more complicated forms using splines, planes, and even points. Once we're comfortable with these basics, we'll then learn how to create smart forms using parameters and even adaptive modeling techniques. By the end of this course, you'll be able to make forms that are totally unique, parametric, and even adaptive. So with that, I'm ready to get started, and I'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we'll create a simple mass of our roof structure. Okay, so in this course, we're going to be working in the conceptual massing environment and also a little bit in the family environment to create some more complex structural forms. A lot of what we know in the conceptual environment is a lot of extrusions and sweeps and bends and things of that nature. But you could create some really unique forms and solids and voids, but you can also create some really cool structural systems. So what you see here on the screen is going to be our end result, or something as close to this as possible. This is a little system I put together. It's a bus stop or transportation stop, kind of made out of a truss system or space frame system there, if you will. So to get started, we're going to start in our massing environment. So I'm just going to go to Revit here, and we're going to open up a conceptual massing file. And we're just going to go with a generic one here. And the first thing I like to do is I like to get my reference planes in place so I can begin setting up my form. So basically the outline of my form is going to be set with reference planes. So the first thing I need to do is set my reference plane. If you begin placing reference planes without first setting your reference plane, you're going to find it to be a little bit frustrating because you're going to have floating reference planes that might be below the work plane you want it to be, or maybe even above. So make it a good habit of always setting your work planes first. It's going to save you a lot of headache and frustration. So I'm going to go ahead and set my work plane. It'll be this level here. And now all I'm going to do is simply draw in some more reference planes. So I'm going to select reference plane here at the top. And the form of my, as you could tell from that image, is kind of a sweeping, curvy, triangular form. So that'll be kind of what I'll be aiming for with my reference planes here. I don't have any specific dimensions in mind, as right now I'm kind of in a conceptual phase, but I definitely know the form that I'm aiming for. So I'm simply going to sketch this out here in the 3D view. And I'm going to make sure I snap at all my endpoints here. And again, I'm going to create, it's like a sweeping right triangular form that's going to have some curves to it as well. So I'm going to bring this down as close to that point as I can, and we'll close that off. So if I wanted to, I could select all these and create a simple surface, but I don't want to create a simple surface. I want this to have a nice elegant curve to it and a sweeping look. So to do that, we're going to set some reference points, and also we're going to be working with some splines, and I'm going to show you some really cool ways to create forms other than just using your basic extrusions or sweeps. So we're going to start working with some of our reference points. So again, just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and set again my reference plane there. And I'm going to select a point here, and I'm going to make sure this is going to be a reference point. So basically, I want 3 reference points. How we'll set it up, we'll set 3 here, 3 running along the middle, and then 3 running along this top. So I'm going to go ahead and draw on work plane, and I'm just going to snap these guys into place. And I'm going to try my best to find the midpoint of this one. And we're going to do the same here. So we'll do 1 there, 1 here, and 1 there. And then we'll finish it off here on the top. 1 here. We'll do 1 kind of towards the middle there, closer to the middle there. Let's go ahead and move this one over. So now the good thing is, once you put these points in place, you can actually move them simply by highlighting. So I'm going to highlight that one, and I can simply move this one over just a bit if I needed to. So now all I need to do is set an offset, basically to create, essentially I want to create 3 curved lines here. 1 there, 1 here, and 1 there. And then we'll later create a form from those 3 simple splines. But before I'm able to do that, I'm going to go ahead and offset this middle so that when we're creating our spline, we actually have the very peak of our curve there set. So I'm going to set that to an offset here. We'll say maybe we want that curve. We don't want it to curve too much, but we definitely want it to be noticeable. So we could say maybe 3 feet. And I'll type that in as my offset, and you can see that that offset automatically occurs there. And I'm going to do the same for these other two here, but I'm going to kind of go up. Here will be 3, we'll do 4 here, and then 5 here to kind of exaggerate that a little bit. So again, I'm going to go to my offset, and we'll do 4 feet, and apply. I'm going to do the same thing here. Go to my offset, 4 feet, apply. So now that I have all my points in place, we can now draw our splines. So remember what I said, make it good practice to always set your plane before we start. So let's take a look at this real quick. We have 3 reference planes we're working with. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So for the first one, I'm going to go ahead and hit set. That'll be my work plane, and now I can really quickly draw my spline in here simply by snapping into place. Now, had I not set my work plane, you'll notice that your points won't actually snap into place, and you'll have lines kind of going all over in this space. So it's definitely a must to work with your reference planes here. So again, we'll set this reference plane. We'll use a spline, and we'll create our curved surface here. And I'll hit modify to get out of that, or I could hit escape to get out of that. And again, we'll go set, front, top there, spline, there, middle. I'll drop it down. You know what? I think I want to exaggerate this just a bit. Now, the cool thing is you can also continue to alter these lines after you create them. So I can get that and simply drag that up, and you'll notice my form. So now I've kind of exaggerated that just a little bit more. So now that we have those 3 elements in place, I can select all 3. And I'm going to hit create form here at the top. And we've created a really basic form for our roof. So in the next lesson, we're going to divide this surface up, and we're going to learn how to really turn this into a structure. So I'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we'll divide the surface of a simple mass and decide on a pattern for the structure. So now that our mass is in place, what we're basically looking at here is a really smooth surface. So we've created a surface in Revit. But with this, if you go take it one step further, with the surface, how this surface is put together is with UV rays. So what we could do is we can actually split this surface into those rays. So all I need to do is highlight that surface we just created. And at the top right here, you'll notice a button called Divide Surface. I'm simply going to select that, and you'll see a nice little mesh appear here. And what this is basically is you could look at this as the bones or the skeleton of that surface we just created. And it's put together with 2, maybe 3 elements here. We've got U grids and V grids, and this is also known as UV grids. So basically, I can control and see what I'm working with up here in the right. So we know this is a surface. So if I were to select that, hit that surface button, my surface appears. So when I click that again, my mesh appears. But how do I know which direction is going in the U direction and which direction is going in the V direction when it comes to my grids? Well, an easy way to kind of get familiar with your structure here is to simply play with these buttons. So what I like to do is I'm going to go ahead and click off my U grid. So now how this reads is anything basically moving in the long direction of this structure, my longer pieces are going to be present when this V grid is highlighted. So I can click on that again, and I can click on the V grids now, and you can see the ones going perpendicular to that or in the opposite direction are present when my U grid is highlighted. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and highlight both. And another thing that really ties this together and will allow us to create a really cool structure are nodes. And those are basically little points that are present at the intersection of our U and V grids. So basically, all we need to do, and this is kind of hidden here, if I didn't see this or no one told me about this, I really wouldn't know it was here. But to get your nodes and drop your nodes into your mesh, just above your options bar, you'll notice a little arrow here. Click that arrow, and we'll get a surface representation window here. And all we need to do is check nodes and click OK. And what that'll do is it'll bring in all our nodes. So if we're placing elements in here, or maybe we're taking an adaptive modeling approach or whatever we're doing with our model, they'll actually be able to snap to these points, and it just makes controlling this a lot better. So now that we have an understanding of how this mesh is structured, let's see what we can do as far as options on patterns. So right now, how this looks is we don't have a pattern set up. So if you look in our properties window, right now we're set with no pattern. But if you wanted to automate and automatically drop in some really cool and interesting patterns to this, we can. So I can go to this drop down, and when I do that, you'll notice we have a wide range of options. I have octagon here, and when I click that, it'll automatically create that form, and it creates this really neat looking form here. I'm sure a lot of people could do something really creative with that. But I'm going to select that again, and I'm going to go back to my drop down, and we can look at a couple of other options and see if they will work for what we have in mind. So we have a triangular flat, which seems like it might do some good for us. But I think I'm going to go with the other style. We're actually going to create a custom pattern ourselves. And I'm going to show you a couple of tricks to actually use that pattern as a way of placing your structure. So what I'm going to do really quickly is just go to my simple rectangular pattern here. And I'm going to select on my object again. And right now our mesh is pretty busy, which means we have a lot of lines going on this way as well as this way. That's going to require a lot of structure. So if I wanted to adjust the spacing between my grids, I can do so. So to understand how that works, I'm going to show you a rule of thumb how I look at it. So basically how this is broken down, you can tell in the properties window here. Once you click on your mesh or your form, you'll see two options here. We have a U-grid area, and we also have a V-grid area. And we can actually come down to the number and adjust that number. And so right now, this number says 12. So what that's telling me is basically that there's 12 bays or 12 spaces in between my meshes. So let's go ahead and count this and kind of verify this. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 bays. And the same thing going in this direction, 12. So if I want to make some adjustments to that and I want to reduce my structure, I can simply do so by dropping that number down to a more reasonable number. And we'll go with 6 for both, in both directions. So I'll change the U and I'll change the V and I'll click apply. And it'll automatically simplify that structure for me, especially a structure like this where it kind of tapers down at the end and things really get closer. I mean, honestly, I could probably stand to drop this down one more time. I know that I'm going to have plenty of structure in there. So let's drop this down to maybe a 5 and see what that does for us. It opens up the spacing in between here. So now that we have an understanding of that, let's take a stop here. And in the next lesson, we're going to jump into creating our own pattern, which will actually be the structure for this mesh we've just created. So I'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we'll begin working with structure for our basic roof form. All right, so now that we have our mesh in place and we have a real good understanding of how this is constructed and how important it is for us to be able to manipulate the spacing and the UV grids, let's start working with some structure to really bring this thing to life. So I'm going to click on this real quick, and I want to see my mesh, and I also want to see my nodes. So what we need to do here is, now that we've explored the different options for patterns, let's take that approach with patterns. Let's create a structure that is a pattern, and let's import that into this, and let's create structure without actually having to go through all the headache of creating each intricate little part. That sounds great to me. So to do that, we need to open up a new family folder. So I'm going to go here to the top, and we're going to go new, and we're going to go with family. And we're going to create a family, or basically a pattern that's really going to host the structure of our roof here. So there's two options we have once we open this. When we're working with panels or anything glass related like that, we can work with curtain wall panels. So we have curtain wall panel, and then we have curtain wall panel pattern based. This is the one we want to work with, because once we create this family, we can actually load it into our project, onto our mass as a pattern, and our structure will be in place with just a few clicks. So I'm going to go OK and open. And we have our plane here set here, and we've got a few adaptive points. So what we need to do now is basically create the basic skeleton of our structure bring it in, test it out, make sure it works, and go from there. So as I mentioned in previous lessons, when I first started out, it's really good practice to always set your reference plane when you're setting points or doing some new moves. Otherwise, you're going to have floating points, and you're going to find it really frustrating when things don't snap into place. So I'm going to go ahead and set my reference plane. And basically, at each one of these points here, we are going to place a point, and we're going to offset it and create the structure for our roof. So I'm going to set this work plane, and I'm simply going to place a model point right at that point. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for the rest of the other three. Set the horizontal plane, and I'm going to go with my model point element there and place it there. Set and place my point. Set and place my point. Once you have your point placed and you begin going through this rhythm, you really don't have to go back and choose point again, unless you're going to switch from a point to maybe a line. But as long as you're using that same tool, you really don't have to jump back. It'll actually save you a couple of extra moves. So now that I have all those in place, we now need to bump these up so they create basically the frame for the glass panel, and then holding that glass panel will be more structure coming down here. So to do that, we could go and try to locate each one of these points, and I can simply try to tab my way through and try to find that one point we just placed, or I can filter it all out and simply move what we just placed. So I'm going to highlight everything, and at the top right, I love this button here. It's my filter button, and it's going to let me filter anything that's in the area that I have highlighted. So again, I just want my reference points to be highlighted, so I'm going to unselect those, keep my reference points checked, apply and OK. And now, without pushing anything else, I'm going to go straight to my properties browser. And now I can create an offset. Now this is going to be basically the depth of my structural system. So it's going to be basically the top of the framing that holds in my glass panel to the bottom of the struts that are actually going to be holding up the roof and the panel. So I need to take that into account and think about head height and things like that. So for my structure, I'm going to go ahead and set this to maybe 8 feet. It might be a little overkill. But again, we are in a conceptual phase, and if I need to make that change, I can make that change very easily. So again, I'm on 8 feet for my offset. I'll click apply. And just to the right of that, there's a little rectangle here. Now, this might be hard to find if you haven't done your research or you're not too familiar with working in creating masses and working with parameters. But that little rectangle there, associate family parameter, once you click that, it's going to give you a little bit of power here. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to add parameter. And what I'm going to do is this offset distance is going to be a parameter, and as my structure is getting placed throughout my curved system, that parameter is going to be set, and I'm going to have a nice, smooth, consistent flow for my glass panels. So I'm going to name this something logical. So we'll call this one frame depth. This makes sense to me. We'll keep it as a type, and we'll go OK. It's highlighted here, so I'm going to go OK there as well. So now we have our points in place. So now all we need to do is create a real basic structure of this thing using some real simple lines, and we'll drop it into the project to test it out. So I'm going to go with some model lines, and I'm going to make sure my 3D snapping's on. If I didn't have 3D snapping on, it would be really difficult getting my line set for these top ones here. So I'm just going to connect all 4 of these elements here. And now what I need to do now is create a structure that's actually going to come down to the middle here. So I'm just going to use another model line real quick that I'm getting ready to erase after I've done what I need to do with it. I just need to locate this middle line, and I'm going to place a reference point at the middle, right there. I'm going to hit modify, and it'll appear. A lot of times you'll set your points, and you'll notice they won't appear right when you set them. You just need to hit either set another point or hit modify, and that point will appear. So now what I can do is draw in some more model lines. Keeping my 3D snapping on, I can go from this corner to the middle and up to the top. We can do the same thing on this side. So we'll go corner, bottom, next corner. And I'm going to kind of scroll around to make sure this looks good here. And really what we could do at this point is get rid of this line. I really don't need that because this structure will actually be sitting on top of a circular column, structural column, if you will, that will actually be supporting that strut. So now that we have our basic skeleton in place, in the next lesson, we're going to bring this in to our project and see how this looks in our curved form. In this lesson, we'll test out our basic structure and further develop the form. All right, so we have the basic skeleton in place for what we're going to add for our curtain panel system. And right now, what we could do is we can actually load this into our project. So basically, all we have to do at this point is at the top right, we'll load in the project. And right now, it's loaded in there. And you can actually see where that's actually located right in here. It'll be underneath patterns. I can go the long way, this way. We can actually try to locate it in here. Or we could simply highlight. And I'm going to go to this drop down. And underneath rectangle, you'll notice mine's called 05 begin, but you'll notice this is basically the form that we created here. So I'll bring that in and we'll drop that in, and you'll notice that pattern automatically became the structure. So I don't have to actually come in here and model in each one of these curves, each one of these struts. I don't have to do any calculations for midpoints. By setting the structure up as a pattern and then bringing it in, this is a really quick and easy way to get your study model to move from an idea to something that's actually workable and you can actually work with and develop. So we're not done yet. Right now, this is just real basic lines, and it's looking good right now, but I really want to take this to the next level and add some more realism to this and some more structure. So I'm going to jump back to our family project folder here. So I'm going to Alt-Tab to jump back to that window. So now what we can basically do is add some thickness to all of these pieces. So my strategy is I want to have these struts be a little bit thicker than what's going on these edges, because these are going to be holding in glass mostly, and these are going to be supporting the weight of the glass as well as anything else that might be on that roof, maybe some wind loads or maybe some snow loads, but maybe our site doesn't have snow. But either way, this is holding up the glass and the frame. It's pretty heavy, so I'm going to make this a little bit thicker. So in order for me to get some form attached to this, I'm going to change these really quick, and then from these model lines that we created to actual reference lines. And it's not hard to do at all. Simple click to get this done. I'm so glad that we can actually bounce around from model line to reference line, because each has their benefit when you're creating forms. So for us, when we're trying to add some thickness, we're going to work with reference lines. So I'm going to select all the model lines that we made earlier, now that we're done testing. And in my drop down here in my properties, all I have to do to switch that from model line to reference line is check that box. And that box says is reference line. So once I check that and click apply, once you see that the planes all appear, and also once I hit that, you'll notice that the lines turn green. That means we're in good shape. So now all I need to do is work with a few reference points, a few forms, and create some forms. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on my point there, and I'm going to place a point anywhere on my first top framing for the panel here. And again, I placed it, it's there. I'm not going to place any more, but if I do place another point, it'll appear, but we're only going to work with one. We really don't need to add all those extra points. So I'll do that and you'll see it appear. So if you do place it and you notice it isn't there, don't worry, place your next point if you need to, or just hit that modify button and you'll see the point you placed. So now, as I mentioned before, we're going to set our plane here. So we're going to set the plane, and I want it to be right there. So now I'm going to create a form. So we're going to create a little tubing system to actually house the glass system here. So we're going to go with maybe 3 inches here. And now I can simply select all my reference planes and my form and create form. And boom, we have the frame for our glass panel system. Now I'm going to do the same thing for my areas here around the side. So we're going to go point, we'll place a point there, place a point there, there, and here. And now I can set my plane. We'll start with this one here. We'll go with the circle. And again, I'm going to make this one just a little bit thicker. We'll go with 5 inches. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So let's see if we can't simply select this form and all these and see if we can't do what we did with the top. And if we can't, we'll just have to place circles on each one. So we'll create form. Yep, not a problem. So I'll go ahead and create this form really quick. So we'll select that one, the form we just put in, create form, and there's our strut. It's a basic form. It's good for a study model. They'll definitely have to detail this out maybe later on in some details, how this is connected, but this is really going to be nice for forming purposes. So I'm going to do the same thing here again. So I'm going to set point, create a circle, 5 inches, hit enter. I'm going to select both of those, plane and form, and create form. Let's do this 2 more times here. Again, we'll go set that reference plane, use a circle, create our form, 5 inches, hit enter. Oop, looks like I didn't get it right here. Let's see if it fit right. Nope, it didn't align properly. So you got to be really careful to make sure it snaps to that midpoint. So I'm just going to Control Z. Let's see if we can't get it right this time. So make sure it snaps there. I'll go set, choose that area, circle. Make sure it snaps into that point so it's in the middle where that point is, 5 inches. Hit enter, and that's a lot better. And then we'll finish this one off really quick. We'll do the same thing. We'll set, point, circle, snap, draw, 5 inches, hit enter, and now we can create the form. Create that strut as well as this strut. Simply by highlighting and Control and selecting both and create form. So we've got that in place, and the only thing we're really lacking right now is going to be the glass. Now, we could have done the glass first and then put the frame in, but if you do get the frame in first, really all you need to do to get the glass in is try your best to kind of locate that simple clean line that you see that's highlighted. Not the actual work plane, but the actual clean line. So we're going to select that one. Do the same thing on this side, holding Control. I want that simple line. We'll do the same thing on this side. I want this simple line. And we need one more. That one. And now I can create form. And I want it to be thin, really, really thin. I don't want it to be this thick. So we'll go with that. And now all I need to do is select it. Come here in its properties. Add a material to it. We'll add a glass material to it. And I'm going to hit modify. And we've created our structure as well as our panel. So in the next lesson, we'll load this into our project, see how it works for us, see if there's any additional adjustments we need to make, and we'll continue working with our bus stop. In this lesson, we'll add our structural pattern to our basic roof form. So now that we've created our basic structure for our curtain panel system here with our struts and our frame and also our glass, I like to load it into the project and kind of test out the structure to make sure it works with the form that I have in place. And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, then we've got some work to do and some adjustments to make. So I'm going to go ahead and load this in. And I'm going to select my mesh, go to the drop down, and let's see if this works for us. And we'll know immediately if it works because the form will be in place. But if it doesn't work, Revit will give us a warning message. And we've got a warning message. So immediately I know what we need to do at this point. It's just letting me know that it can't make that rectangle. So we're going to have to make some adjustments to a couple of dimensions. One, possibly our strut thickness, and two, the placement or how we placed our glass panels within our system here. So I'm going to Control Z out of here really quick and get back to my basic mesh, but then I'm going to Control Tab and go back to my form. So let's make some adjustments to our form here. So we can go ahead and get started with the easiest one here. We'll start with our form here, and I'm going to highlight that form and get rid of it, and we'll get rid of everything on there. And we'll go ahead and get rid of these guys as well. So I'm going to get rid of that element, get rid of this element, and this element. So I'm going to try to create my struts first, but I'm going to reduce that dimension. We'll reduce it to about 3 inches. Originally, we had it with a 5-inch radius, so we'll switch that to 3. So again, we'll do what we did before. I'm sure we have a good understanding of how this works now. We've done it quite a bit, so we'll go ahead and place the point. We'll set. We'll create our circle, making sure we snap on that center point. Looks like we need to make sure we get a model here. Reference model line. Actually, we need to set that line. So we'll go set, select, draw my circle, 3 inches, hit enter. We'll come do the same thing here. We'll set a point, we'll set a plane, we'll draw a form, snap it in place, 3 inches for the radius. Got a couple more to go here. Place. We'll go ahead and set that as well. Get my circle. Make sure it snaps. Draw it in place. 3 inches. Enter. And I'm going to finish out this last one before I start filling in the forms here. So again, we'll place our point. We'll set. We'll go ahead and draw a circle on that point. 3 inches. And now we'll start forming everything out. We'll do this one at a time. So I'll select my form and my line. Create. Line, form, create. Line, form. Once I get it here. Create. And same thing on this side. Line, form, create. So now we can come to the top here and do the same thing. We'll go ahead and do our panels first this time. So I'm going to select all of these here. We'll create a form, create our thin sheet. We'll apply material to this. I'll click OK here, and I'm also going to set a point to create our form for our framing that's actually going to house this in. And again, we're going to go with that same 3-inch dimension. So we're going to be consistent. Maybe these adjustments will actually allow our structure to be accepted by that form we've created. So this time I'm going to set. There, we'll draw another circle, and we'll do 3 inches here as well. 3 inches, enter. And this time I'm going to select all my reference lines. Once I get them, they're a little hard to highlight. I'll just rotate around, you get a better view. You'll be able to locate those guys. And our form, and create form. So now we have made adjustments to our radius on both the struts and the frame for the glass, and we've also adjusted the placement of our glass. So we'll see if this will work for us. So I'm going to load this into project. I'm going to overwrite my existing version. I'm going to select, and this time I'm going to go to my drop down. Let's see if this will work for us. So again, we'll know immediately if the structure's in place, and if not, we'll get a warning message. And voila, we've got our structure in place as well as our panel system and our glass. So I know that my glass is in place when I kind of move around here, and you can see a small tint to my glass. Later on when we're, if you wanted to, we can make some adjustments to the tint of this glass, but I'm pretty happy with this. I know it's there. That's the main thing. And I know there is a small tint to it. And my structure's intact and in place. So this is a really quick, efficient, easy way to create study models for complex forms using the conceptual massing environment, and also creating families and for patterns. So in the next lesson, we're going to drop this into an actual project, and we're going to finish out this structure. We're going to add some columns to actually set this thing on the ground, and maybe add a little bit of entourage to bring this to life. So I'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we'll make a few changes to our structural form and load it into an actual project. All right, so we've got a really neat looking form in place here. It's going to be the structure that's going to be holding up the glass panels for our bus stop. But I want to play around with this form just a little more. I want to make this look a little cooler. How it's set right now, we would have to have a ton of concrete columns to actually hold this up. So I'm going to make some adjustments to that, and I really want to make this into a really neat form. So I'm going to select that, and we're going to play around with our grid. So we don't have to have both selected. We can have one selected, none selected, just whatever we're working with. So I'm going to see how our structure looks if I turn off our U's. Oh, that's okay. That's a pretty neat structure, but it's not going to work for what I want. We're going to have a bunch of struts going through there, and I don't want that. It's kind of in the way here, and it's not going with the my design intent. So I'm going to turn those back on, but I'm going to turn off my V's, and I'm going to see what that does in terms of our structure here. All right, and I'm liking the way this looks here. So this looks pretty cool at this point. Go to my realistic view, make sure all our panels are still in place, and they are. What I would like to do really quickly is to load this into a project at this point and see if we can't attach this to some concrete columns and really bring this to life, and maybe take this from a really basic structural concept for a roof to an actual bus stop design idea. So now we're going to load this into a project now that we've made this change. So it's kind of cool that we don't have all that structure there. This is pretty neat looking structure. Pretty unique. So I'm going to go to the R up here, and we're going to open up a new project, and it's going to be in the architectural template. And I'll control tab back to this project, and we're going to load this one right in here. Project 2, OK. And I'll say close. And it looks like we have a bunch of X's here, but it's just our view depth. We're only getting a portion of the structure in our view, but it's okay. I'm simply going to place that there. And right now we get a warning here, and that's because we've actually built a structure as opposed to maybe a solid box or square or something like that where we can actually mass in floors. And that's what this is letting us know is, hey guys, the mass you just created, you can't create floors from it, which I'm not too worried about that. This is going to be just a roof structure, so I'll escape. I'll X out of that, escape to get out of that command, jump to 3D view to kind of check on my progress here. I'm really liking this cool looking structure. It's pretty unique looking, especially for a bus stop. So now all we need to do really is create a nice column grid, and we're going to place some columns. And we probably don't even need to do a column grid, but we'll place some columns at these points here where these struts intersect, and that'll actually be supporting our roof structure here, and we'll be able to really bring this to life. So I'm going to go to second floor plan, see how that looks with my view depth. And I'm going to go to wireframe so I can see through. And so what my game plan is going to be at each one of these intersects is where we're going to place a column. So we're going to go to structure, column, and I want to go with a concrete circular column. So we're going to go structural columns. And we'll go concrete, and I want a circular concrete column. So we'll go with that one, open. And it's going to be holding up quite a bit, so it's going to need to be much larger than the 12-inch here. So we'll go with maybe the 30-inch. And I'm going to change that from a depth to a height. Keep it at 9 feet. We'll make some adjustments later if we need to. So we could try to place this now. We may actually have to have grids in place. Yeah, we'll go ahead and have that. We'll place the grids, but we already have the structure or the column in place, so that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and place my grids here. So we'll create one grid going from this area. We'll shoot it up going to there. And then I'll simply just stretch out that grid, just so it goes past my extents there, so I don't get lost in all the line work. And then I'm going to create some more that are going to go horizontally at each intersection. That one there. And I can worry about the annotation a little bit later, once I really want to finalize this for documentation or finalize it for presentation. I'm not too worried about adjusting the annotation just yet. I really just want to get the grid lines in place so that I can get my structure in place. So get this first one here, get the next one. Making sure they are straight, and making sure I'm at these intersections here, and going past the extents. And again, you can come back and clean up all these lines and grids a little bit later. Again, I'm just worried about getting them in place so that I can get my structure in place. So now we can come back to structural column. We'll place it at the grids, and we'll just select our grids. And we'll automatically get our columns in place. I can come in here and check it out. Looks like they actually went up and actually went to the wrong level, but that's not a problem just yet. I can actually make that adjustment. We'll just Control Z out of that, go back to level 1. And that's because we were on level 1 when we set that. So got to make sure we're on the right level. So I'm going to go structural column, at grids, and I'll make that placement. And we'll green check mark once that's done. Take a look, and we're in good shape. We're in business here. Looks like I could probably add one more here. So I'm going to jump back to my level 1 plan. see where we're missing our column. So we're actually missing it from the 1, 2, 3, 4th intersection from the bottom. So I'll go back to that plan. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4th intersection. So right there. So we'll go column, and I'll place that column right there. We should be in good shape. Perfect. So we have a few more adjustments we need to make to this for it to work for our design. And in the next lesson, we'll go ahead and finish out this design and wrap up this course. In this lesson, we'll put some finishing touches on our bus stop project. All right, so we've got our columns in place. I'm going to jump to an elevation view and kind of see where we're at. So it looks like we could stand to make a few adjustments here. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust the placement of this. I definitely want to maintain that head height, so that's going to be important for me. So we're going to grab, and we're simply going to move this guy up to level 2. And we're going to attach our elements here. Each one of these guys need to actually go up to that level. So I think what happened was I didn't change that to depth once we made a simple change, but that's not a problem. I'm going to change that offset to 9 feet. Click apply, and it should attach there. So now what we can do is we can make an adjustment. We can either bring this down more, or I can go ahead and bring this up. So for now, I'm just going to select that, bring it down, and we're going to attach it to that center point there. So now we have a really cool structure in place for our bus stop design here. So it's really unique. So I'm going to go ahead and put a floor in here to kind of ground this, and we'll add some entourage to also bring this to life. I'm going to jump into my realistic view just so I can enjoy the realism of this bus stop here. Okay, so we'll add a floor really quick. So I'm going to go to first floor plan, and we'll go to architecture. I'm going to add a floor to kind of ground this project. Simple floor, nothing too spectacular. 3D view. All right, looking pretty decent. And now what I like to also do is maybe add some trees to kind of match that view or match what we had going on with the image we had before. So now I can come to site here, and we'll add some site elements, some site components. Add a few trees to our site. I'm going to do this in my site plan here. Again, I'll go site component, and we'll have some trees as a natural barrier here from the rest of traffic. And maybe we could place another one there. So I'll jump back to 3D view. So far, so good. And now I can jump to back. Well, actually, we'll do this in a 3D view. I'm going to bring in some more parking or some more site entourage. So we'll go site component. This time I'm going to load family. We're going to go entourage. And we'll bring in a couple people here. So I'm going to bring in a male. We'll place a businessman right here. And we'll also place another guy. Get Jay, and we'll place him right about there. So now we can create a really cool view for this for presentation purposes. We've got entourage for scale. You know, our bus stop or bus terminal is really coming together here. So I'm going to jump to view. We'll create a 3D view. We'll finish this off. Camera. Let's do it in floor plan. Go back to 3D view, camera. And we'll create a view from this angle here, and we'll just shoot it across. There we go. So there we go. We've created our space frame steel tubing structural system for this bus stop here. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in a realistic view here. Nice. And we can actually, I want to show off this roof a little bit more. So there we go. So to kind of cover what we've learned in this course, we've basically from scratch learned how to create a space frame system. And then from there, we basically dumbed it down a little bit, took away some extra structure to create this really simple, minimalist looking bus stop. And so we got started basically by using reference planes, creating a basic form in a massing environment. From there, we kind of played around with dividing the surface of the mass or surface that we created, and we explored with some of the different patterns that Revit has to offer. We took it a little bit further and kicked it up a notch and went into a family environment and created our own pattern. And we used a little trick for actually using that pattern to host the structure for this system. So that way we saved a ton of time and headache on not having to create different struts and elements within that structural system. And then once we were able to do that, we were able to tweak our design and our form just a little bit. We brought it into this project environment to really finish it off. So with these tips and techniques and tools, I'm confident you'll be able to create some really cool structures other than just your basic rectangles or triangles or solid forms. You'll actually be able to really create some really cool structures, whether it's steel, wood, concrete, whatever you're working with, when you're working in the conceptual massing environment. So I'm happy to show you this, and I hope this helps you out.